getting tipped off the story like, oh, you got to write about Bitcoin, like it's going crazy. And so it was like, it went from like $20 to $100. I want to live in a world where we can own things that in the digital space.
What's good, everyone? Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Web3 experience. Every week, we meet with the most innovative minds across culture, business, and technology to discuss how Web3 is unlocking a new era of opportunity for entrepreneurs, businesses, and creators alike.
By speaking with the builders of tomorrow and hearing their unique perspectives on Web3 and the world at large, we aim to break down the many existing societal frameworks that blockchains aim to disrupt.
I'm your host, Mosey.
And I'm Freelance.
And welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Web3 experience. Today we're here with Josh ONG, who is on the Bored Ape Yacht Club Community Council, and he has a huge footprint in the Web3 space. So we'd love to just share his insight and perspectives on what he's building and what experiences he's had. Thanks for being here with us, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, so, Josh, let's start off with just, I guess, your background. I was listening to a podcast you had done, I think it was late last year, and you mentioned being around Web3 and crypto around the time that maybe CryptoKitties was starting off. So what got you into crypto in the first place? Like what attracted you to the Web3 space?
I used to work as a journalist. So I was covering tech and, the rise of the new internet economy, stuff like that. And so I remember getting tipped off the story like, oh, you got to write about Bitcoin, like it's going crazy. And so it was like, it went from like $20 to $100 or something. So I was like writing about it. Because I had to cover it, I had to learn about it. And so that was a really neat opportunity. Just, I think as a journalist, you have to have a certain amount of curiosity. And that was really kind of my entry point, where someone was just like, hey, look into this thing, because it's might be getting some traction. And so as a journalist, I had a chance to follow it a bit and cover. And I remember like Mount Gox happened and some other stuff. And it was a crazy time, obviously. And I was on the sidelines because I remember asking my editor, like, hey, I want to buy some Bitcoin after writing about this. He's like, no, that doesn't feel right. And so I just wrote about crypto for a couple of years and was just following it. And then later was able to work at a mobile app developer that was working on some dApps and some blockchain research. So got a little bit of experience like in the kind of early crypto marketing world. And I remember hearing about Ethereum, and then at some point, like people were like, yeah, these people are like doing this like CryptoKitties thing. It's kind of crazy. And so I remember like going on the site trying to play the game. I was like, looking for the traits to breed and figure it out. So that was like, the early DGen days. It was fun. And I was thankful for that experience, because later on, when I found out about NBA Top Shot, it was like, I noticed that it was Dapper Labs, and I was like, oh, that's that company that did those kitties back in the day. And so to me, that was what was interesting. It's like, okay, I know these people as being like kind of OGs in the NFT and the Web3 space, and they're partnered with the NBA. Like there's got to be something there. So that was my re-entry into NFTs.
Wow, awesome. And your conviction when you first got into NFTs, did you just look at it from a journalist perspective as a new, kind of fad coming out, or did you look into like the technicals and kind of get, immersed into the future of blockchain? I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is like my conviction came over the course of a few years. And so I can't really say like I was like one of the, I mean, there are some OGs who were like, minting thousands of crypto punks or whatever they were doing. Like, but I was approaching this as a collector. I remember like when Gods Unchained came out, I bought some packs because it was like I was playing Hearthstone, or I played, Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon as a kid. And so like those were things that made sense to me. And so anything from like collectibles and gaming, cards, so like I went through a big kind of like alternative asset, like collector phase, where I was like reselling sneakers, and I was collecting streetwear and selling some of that. And so, and then also sports cards and trading cards. And so like, that was over the last like 2-3 years. And so when I got back into NFTs, like part of it was like taking a look at some of my own collector habits and where I see our generation going, and then recognizing like being able to move that into the digital realm was really fun and very exciting. And for me, like saved a lot of space where I ran out of room for sneakers and shirts and jackets and stuff. So
Now you're getting that through NFT communities.
I know. I had to get another locker.
Oh shoot! Yeah, you're right. It's like we thought we were saving space, putting it all in a MetaMask wallet, and now we got our closets full with merch and hoodies and shoes and jackets and everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, it came back to bite me, but glad to rep some NFT merch too. So yeah, I mean, I guess the big picture for me, I think where I finally got it was at first it was like an experiment, like, oh, okay, just like we made, internet money, like maybe we're making like these like internet collectible things, like that's kind of cool. And I remember I was listening to this podcast in like January 2021 where Rohan was talking about, the CEO of Dapper Labs was talking about how they thought about this digital collectible that they were making with the NBA. And he compared it to like, when they sign a license with NBA, like what the mission that they were given is like, how do you create a tangible digital asset that feels and as permanent and as owned as like the jersey that you buy at the NBA store, or like ticket stubs from a game, or like things that you like possess and therefore like can keep and trade and display, and can't really be taken from you. And they were trying to create this digital tangibility. And that was like, to me, mind opening, where I was like, look, when I started to see that this was catching on, like, okay, this is opening a door to this like whole new experience that until now we've like had been quite unable to have in the digital realm.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to see that collision too. It always brings me back to like these unique experiences and jerseys and collectibles in the future. It's like, obviously Top Shot's had a lot of dilution and backlash in recent months, but I think the core element of NFT just providing verified authenticity of an owner owning a collectible, and then that can unlock the physical in the future just from the consumer and the business being able to verify each other and that relationship, and then reward the consumer in that way. It reminds me like the tangible aspect for ticketing, and how do you know if a jersey's real or fake? How do you know if a ticket is forged? There's a lot of friction that lies in with that validity process, and I think NFTs and that verification helps in that respect a lot, and we'll see a lot of innovation, I'm sure. But moving forward, I wanted to talk about some social media, the social media growth that you have provided to yourself and to help build your brand in the past couple years. What tips would you give, with Elon just acquiring Twitter and wanting to monetize it to begin rewarding creators more so? What tips would you give for people that, small time creators who want to get more involved and want to build their community more and get to a place where they can monetize in the future? Because we see all these platforms are going to begin helping creators monetize as we shift towards a more virtual society.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, maybe 3 tips there that I think about as a, social media personality, as like content creator, is like, one, I think, provide value. So that looks like a lot of different ways for every different account. Some people are like highly educational, some people are highly entertaining, some people are like, the alpha warriors that are like, sending a lot of tips. Like I think early on, like I heard back from people who like were able to do really well just from stuff that I was sharing, that I was collecting, and whether that was like, artifact pigeon sneakers, or Bored Apes from day one, or other stuff. Like people are really grateful for that, and hopefully have done well. The second tip I would say is like, know your audience. And so like you just want to know not just who's following you now, but who you're trying to reach, because the more you're able to match who you are and the content that you create with the people that you want to connect with, like I think that's going to be really important. And the third, I would say, is consistency. So just making sure that you're showing up and you're active and people kind of know what to expect. I hosted like a ton of spaces early on, and a lot of it was like, at some point it was weekly, or it was like almost daily. and there was just, you know, a consistency to that I think was really helpful. So yeah, I'm super thankful for all the people who follow me, and hope that I'm able to, you know, help them make it and win in the space, and you know, build some community together and make some friends along the way.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So you mentioned being in Bored Ape early, and I know a few people that have, obviously there's a number that have minted early and have been in it in the long run, but I think you're a great example of someone who was really involved with the community, kind of from the beginning. So what was that experience like? I mean, kind of riding that wave as it really caught its footing, right? I mean, from the early days, like, I mean, you were around like when Ape Follow Ape started and everything. So what was that? Did that feel like anything that you've been a part of before? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my shorter answer is like, it was fun. It was just so much fun, and I think a lot of it was like, we had no idea what was coming. I don't think we imagined that things would become as global and as impactful as they were, and so it was just like kind of hanging out as friends, like seeing where it would go. So that was a big part of it. I was fortunate to organize some of the first Bored Ape meetups, and had a grant from the club to do that. And I remember like the first one I organized in LA, it was like 60, 70 apes came out with friends, and it was like this was like July 2021. So it's like, you know, Ape's only been out a couple months, and it was just fun. Like, nobody knew what was going on. We just like were weird and showed up. And so you know, when I think about people talking about like, you know, kind of early energy of a community, I think that's really what you want to see, is like creativity, positivity, connection, and just fun. And I think those are like really great you know, pillars to building something cool. And it was great. I mean, I felt a lot of support from the club, but I also felt like I didn't need their permission, which I think was like really best of both worlds, right? Like I had this like crazy idea last summer for like, why don't we do like a yacht party at a TNYC? And Peter Fang and I like started kicking around the idea. We looked up some quotes, and we're trying to figure out like, how do we price this? Like, who's gonna pay for it? And we had a call with the founders of BOYC, and we're like, hey, we have this stupid idea. I don't know if you guys want to get involved. And they were like, you know, I think we could make this happen. And so look, if they hadn't supported it, we probably would have done it anyway. It just would have been, you know, a little grungier. But yeah, with their support, like, we were able to do a really fun event for apes, that yacht party the first year, and then that turned into Ape Fest, and they ran with it, and supported it with event planner, and, you know, the book and steal event. But really, it just started like a couple community members just kicking around like, what's the craziest thing we can do, and can we get some support for it? So appreciated their willingness to team up with some randos.
That's like, I mean, I think that not only, I mean, there's community strength of your holders, right? But I think that goes to show the level of involvement in the way that the founders would even listen and participate with the community. So I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, thank you, because I was on that yacht, and
Nice.
you know, it was a great party. So definitely a good time. Appreciate you kicking around the ideas and coming up with it.
Yeah, of course.
And on that topic of, you know, having fun and that beginning phase of a project, how do you see the market today? Do you see that type of energy and fun, you know, happening anymore, or are people's expectations just far exceeded what the NFT, you know, kind of community was founded upon?
Yeah, no, that's tough. I mean, I think the reality, like, we've seen it the last few weeks, is like, there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of toxicity in the space right now. And I understand it. Like, bags are down. It's hard. Some people are bored and just have nothing to do but like start drama. That's obviously not why so many of us like came to the space and like are excited about it. So it's tough. I do think like little pockets of communities are being built and formed, and maybe, you know, they might even be even better than they would have been if they started in a bull market, because I think hopefully people will join it for the right reasons, or like, for more meaningful reasons. I think a lot of people in the bull market were kind of around, like they caught wind of like, oh, there's gains to be had, and they showed up, and that wasn't necessarily nefarious. It's just like, that's one motivation that's pretty strong for a lot of people, and that's what was leading a lot of like the kind of mid to late, bull run growth. So I'm glad to see the people who are still here, other than the toxic ones. Like most of the people who are still here are like actually pretty chill, because they're in it for a lot of other reasons. I think the reality during the bull market was like, numbers go up was fun. Like it's hard, like there's no lie about it. I mean, that was like totally euphoric and obviously got out of control, but that, there's other things that matter than beyond just like, floor price and stuff. So hopefully, we build out of this bear and come to a place where the communities that were started in this season are strong and robust and have really quality people and can do some amazing things, especially with the wind at their backs instead of pushing them back.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of investors in the last bull, that like early Bored Ape community, you guys know it more than I do, but I don't think it could be replicated. After people saw the gains, I feel like a lot of the communities that were being built after that and the engagement, a lot of it was fake because people wanted the profits, right? And then a lot of those communities died because in the bear, they're not seeing those returns, and obviously their engagement goes down. But that shows you the strength of the Bored Ape community, is that no matter the cycle, no matter price go down, price go up, we're all like, everybody's always, I feel like there's many open-minded people that were there early that are still building, on their IP or building educational, consulting, doing other things to help onboard the next generation for the next cycle, right? Yeah, so thanks for that.
It kind of reminds me even of like 2018, everything cratering, but then you had these specific pockets like you mentioned, the Link Marines, like the Ripple fanatics, like there's these little groups that stick around, and then people from that, they're there because they believe in something, not like you said, just the capitalistic side of it or the profit. So moving forward, I guess I have a question about the Bored Ape Council. I mean, that's one way I think that you get to participate in this like building, especially during the bear market. Mm-hmm. So what was that like getting elected or involved with that, and how do you feel being a member of that?
Yeah, it's a huge honor to be part of the council. I'm really thankful to Yuga and the founders to kind of respond and initiating that. And I'm it's in some ways like we're still exploring what it means and what we're going to do. We've got a few things in the works and had a few meetings, and I'm excited to represent other members and hopefully make sure that they're heard and make sure that we can do some more cool stuff, like the stuff that we've been planning, over the past year and a half, just taking that to the next level with more direct lines with Yuga, and also hopefully still retaining our autonomy, where we have the chance to like call them out on stuff that doesn't work out, things like the other side drop, and provide some feedback on like, hey, it's been a while since people have heard from y'all. Can we like open those lines back up? And they hear that, and they're working on that. So I have a ton of respect for the founders. They've, even from like the early days to now, I think that they're very much still the same people and just like super down to earth, really committed to the community and also having some fun doing some cool stuff. So yeah, glad to be part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had an impromptu event. Laura put it together at the bodega in South Beach, but he was out of town that one weekend, and we got to meet.
It was awful, and all two of the founders were there.
Yeah, we met Garga and Gordon, and we chopped it up with them. And yeah, they're very down to earth. They're normal people. We're all people, right?
Talk about FOMO though, for real.
Yeah, he texted me after he was pissed. Sorry, let's transitioning. We wanted to talk about the fan controlled football league and your involvement in the Bored Ape Football Club, and how do you see that vision of more democratized ownership and more like small time owners of a team and like a community owned initiative? How do you see that trickling into other sectors, and also how has that impacted your perspective on things and the league itself?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to connect with the team, and they're like, "Hey, we want to make a Bored Ape team. We're like, I think we're just do it with some holders. Do you want to be part of it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. That sounds awesome." So went out to a few games, and like it being in this, I mean, it's fun voting on Twitch and in the app, but when you're there, like in the stadium, like watching it happen live, like I remember I was in the end zone, like in the box, and they, BAFC was like close to scoring, and I picked this play with like some of the other owners, and it led to a touchdown. And I remember I just had this moment, was like, I picked that, like I chose that touchdown. It like there's this sense of control and empowerment and shared ownership that just feels incredible.
Yeah.
Whereas like I think so many sports experiences are really passive. And if anything, one of the FCF missions was kind of like, how do we make, it's this like combination of like Madden and like real life, like how do we make a live sport feel like a game, and a game being something that you can interact with, that you can have choices that have a real impact on the game, and win or lose. And so it's incredibly fun. It feels like like football from the future, but it's here now. So yeah, I mean, zooming out from that a bit, like I think what's really fun as we think about what this could be like for other sectors and other experiences, is just when we talk about like Web3 something, it's really this idea of like, is there an element of decentralization in it? And that could be anything from like that decision making, like calling plays or managing a team together, to like the creative process, like something like Jenkins of LA, to eventually, once we get the SEC on board, like the idea of like maybe fractionalizing some assets and having some shared ownership. And I think we're seeing that with properly structured DAOs and things like that. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, like Web3 is this kind of idealistic promise of like power to the people. That's what decentralization can be. And then also, like, I realize so much of the world is the opposite, right? It's like power to the few. Yeah. And so, that's what we're all like fighting for in these early days, is how do we advocate for greater decentralization to the things that matter to us, and, true digital ownership through the blockchain and through decentralization. And those two combined are going to be really special for potentially anything. And anything that we do. It happened to come to a football team and a football league first. Basketball, fan control hoops coming up soon, and it'll come hopefully to like a lot of different things. I know that there's like people experimenting with like trying to buy sports teams and racing teams, and anything from like soccer / football to
we saw the English Premier League 2 team, Crowley, I think it was Crowley FC.
Oh yeah.
They get bought up by Adidas. And then you see Gutter Gang, in the basketball tournament, they have a team. So you kind of see these small little transitions and shifts for these decentralized companies becoming, a part of these Web 2 based initiatives but these are Web 2 initiatives like arena football and fan control football and the basketball tournament that are trying to, take away some of that viewership that has been dominated by these huge leagues, which, on the topic of it, are all controlled by the richest people in the country, and, maybe people that aren't best suited to make decisions. And there's a lot of people who are so invested emotionally in these teams and in these, you would think that they have a stake in it, how like passionate people are over sports and athletics and entertainment. So shifting over into a more democratized system of entertainment is a very interesting thing to talk about. And I wanted to talk about the SEC because you're talking about how the fractionalization and that. What kind of perspectives, with your experience talking on these types of topics, would you give towards like that progress that's being built and fractionalizing assets and working with the SEC to make sure that they're not securities?
Yeah, I mean, a couple perspectives there. I think one is, especially in the US, the regulatory environment is a little slow to catch up, and technology moves fast. So I understand that, like, you've got these old senators making decisions and they just don't even understand. Like, I've listened to some hearings and they're just like, what, and I mean, I understand that if my grandpa were like trying to make rules about this stuff, like, he'd probably be slow and a little out of it too. So I mean, I think a lot of that is just like advocating for greater education when it comes to some of these new technology concepts and industries that are emerging. I think the reality is, like, Web 1, 2, and 3, like, actually went really fast. It's all in one lifetime. And so far. And yet, like, companies were like trying to figure out, what's my e-commerce strategy? What's my like website strategy? And all of a sudden it's like, what's my social strategy? And now it's like, what's my Web3, blockchain, NFT, whatever. It's hard enough for a company to keep up, much harder for a government. So without excusing it, like, just recognizing, hey, like, that's kind of a naturally slow pace. And in some ways that slow pace is meant to be partly protective to people, as opposed to, you don't want to be too reactionary, like, oh shoot, like, we're gonna make a new law, and then it takes time, enforce and regulate on like trying to keep some of those bad actors out. And and then even just like kind of over promising, and what that means for speculation and market manipulation. So it hasn't been a perfect space. To me, that doesn't mean that the technology is bad. In fact, if anything, like, it's exciting to me that there's enough promise that people came and tried to take from it. Means we need to kind of be better, have better watchdogs. But so I guess, like, I would love to see healthy but responsive regulations alongside protective but not like overly conservative enforcement. Like, that's my hope. Like, I think, like, I need to be a realist and recognize, like, we've got to have some regulation and some enforcement. And actually, what's painful for a lot of companies right now is the lack of knowing, right? Like not having
it really hampers innovation.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and there's like people who want to do cool stuff, and they're like, we just want to know what's okay, and we're going to go do it. We don't want to break the rules, and nobody wants to be the
guinea pig.
the example.
like you said before, there's a huge gap in just technical knowledge when it goes from like our generation to the generation before us. And then when you get to like politicians, where the average age is around like 65 to 75, they're basically barely using like phones, and they have people that do all their tech stuff. So for them to have to put together legislation that can understand and try to take a hold of this, because obviously, some of these technologies and this technology as a whole is aiming to disrupt a lot of the monopolies that they put in place and grasp that they have on certain sectors of the global industries, right? So yeah, it's going to take, I would say, a decade of new life to become, more relevant. Like, you see the mayor in Miami, Mayor Suarez, is young, and he's tech savvy and is very excited about Web3, like his involvement with the Bored Ape and having the charity initiative that they did a few weeks ago. Yeah. It's exciting stuff, for sure. But we need time. There's time.
Yeah, and I'm really encouraged by we'll call them young folks, but they're not that young, right? But like people who like have chosen civic engagement in response to recognizing that, like, hey, there's some issues, as opposed to, like, I think it's easy for youngish people to actually disengage, and I think that actually is kind of hurtful, because the system is disincentivizes a lack of engagement. And so I'm really happy to see like young people running for office who understand these issues and are excited about them. I know we've had a few crypto folks who've really tried to make a difference there. And yeah, it's a tough system to break into, but we need representation, and that means, representation who understands the tech and the industry and the community.
Definitely. You were saying too with the ICO day, the ICOs and the NFT craze last year, like there was a lot of money because there's a lot of people with blockchain experience that had, that are they don't have good intentions, and they've been around for a while, and they're waiting for newbies to come in to fish them and to scam them. And I feel like in the last year, so much liquidity has been sucked out of the market because one, the UI UXs and the friction level on all these protocols are tough for people that aren't very tech savvy and don't understand the tech. So like they were feasting on these newbie investors that were coming in over all the marketing push and all of the craze that they were seeing on socials. And a lot of that liquidity got sucked out of the market leading up to the bear. And now we're in this phase where we really need to, that's why we created this podcast, is to educate people and to let this technology evolve and become increasingly frictionless and attract a more global, more global adoption for sure. Yeah.
So, switching it up a little bit, I know we've been talking about some more serious with the regulations, but you've got something that I think probably you don't have to worry about regulation coming up. You're utilizing, is it your ape for the Maui Prime? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, fun. Yeah. So Maui Prime is like the name of my my PFP ape.
Right.
He's
Cool.
a robot.
I like it.
A robot with a Hawaiian shirt. So I was kind of like, oh, put two things together. And the backstory, which I like worked with the Jenkins team and kind of shared like early on, was like Maui Prime is a time traveling robot that was like sent back by this like rogue AI to destroy Ethereum. But he was like sent back and arrived at the yacht club, and Jenkins was like, "Oh shoot, like what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm looking to destroy Ethereum." He's like, "Oh, why don't you come hang out?" And so so he like
awesome.
gave me my Hawaiian shirt and my beanie and just like was like, "Come hang out in the club." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Like I don't need like Maui Prime like gave up his death mission and decided to just like hang out in the yacht club. So yeah, I mean, I think what's been fun for me is like just exploring, okay, this is more than just a picture, and it's more than just a membership card. It's also like this micro intellectual property that I get to, like a character that I get to build and create and tell and license. And so that's been some of the fun that I've been having. Like, prior to getting to Web3, some of what I did was like I worked as like a publicist and a marketer. And so in some ways, like I became my ape's publicist, and was just like doing interviews with my ape, and like my ape ended up in like all sorts of like articles and SEO stuff. And so at one point, like if you Googled NFT avatar, like my ape was the thumbnail. And so it was just like, I think like that naturally came about from me just playing around with what does it mean to tell a story connected to this character? Like, what does Web3 IP look like when you have kind of individual commercial rights? And so, yeah, like I've worked on like a hot sauce for Maui Prime that's like pineapple and jalapeno. I've worked on, just launched like with Bored Jobs. They just launched like Bored Gifts. And so now there's like these AI pictures with my ape that you can order on like wrapping paper and mugs and like all sorts of stuff. So it's like just all sorts of crazy licensing and having fun with it. So yeah, I think like what's funny to me, and I see this with like Applied Primate, which is Fragment, they're telling the story of the megas. I see this with Jenkins and others, is like there's this like Bored Ape cinematic universe. And I think what's fun for me is like no one, not even Yuga, decides what's canonical within that universe. Yeah. We do as holders. Because like if we accept something, then it is, even if it's conflicting, because it's like paradoxical. It's already weird. It's a bunch of apes on the blockchain. Like we recognize how absurd that is. So yeah, I mean, I like to believe that like all these apes exist in the same universe, and when we tell stories that like Maui Prime met Jenkins the valet, and maybe knows now Maui Prime actually just recently got a job working at Applied Primate with Fragment as like crisis manager and publicist for APE. And so yeah, there's just like my apes doing stuff in this weird
I
cinematic
love,
universe, and
I
then I'm doing
love,
stuff in the real world.
yeah, I love how you were saying how you're your ape's publicist and marketer. It's such a good way of like building a brand, right? And like you're interviewing your ape and getting SEO optimized by having these articles about this ape that you bought. It's a whole alter ego. It's really cool, really really cool. There's gonna be a lot of brands being built around the IP. We're already seeing it. Board Jobs does a great job of trying to propel these forward, and obviously you do as well. It's really interesting to see what happens in the next Ape Fest. Let's see how many trucks or new brands we could see there, right? Yeah. So moving forward, so let's talk about you. Boardroom Ventures is a consulting agency that you created. You're a part of.
Now, is there a pun in that name?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a BORED board. Yeah, so prior to getting so deep in Web3, I was working at a what we call like a Web2. Well, I started a Web2 agency that was focused on like communications, marketing, branding, all that stuff. And when I like got more involved in Web3, I was getting a lot of requests from projects and artists and brands to potentially help them. And I was like running it through my old agency, and at some point I realized like I think it makes sense. Like Web3 is this whole new thing. Like I think I'd rather start something new. So I got together with a couple partners, and we formed Boardroom Ventures. And so the idea of the boardroom, pun intended, is really this idea of like what does it mean to bring our professional lives and then also kind of our degen, like Web3 personas like together and take some of the work that we've done out in the wild. Like I consulted on some like early stuff for like TikTok and Musically, and I've worked with a bunch of different brands in Web2. What does it look like to kind of carry that into Web3 and partner with some legacy brands, help them think about what it means to come into the space in an authentic way, and then also work with NFT projects or startups, Web3 startups, as they think about trying to reach their community and build it, how to grow on social, and then how to launch Web3 products. So we have like kind of two divisions. One is the agency, the consulting side, and then we're also working on a fund. So making some investments in NFTs and also some equity.
Awesome.
What out of curiosity, with people that have approached you or projects looking to launch something, are there like a common list of things that maybe misconceptions or mistakes, things like that you see that maybe a good thing to throw out there for anyone who's interested in starting something?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time to market. I mean, we worked with some projects, and it's just been a grind. It's not quite as easy as it was like last year when it felt like everything was minting. Almost everything was. But yeah, I mean, I think the big picture for me is like know your goals and your audience, and then your message, right? So because you got to connect those down to like, okay, what do we want to accomplish, and who do we want to reach, and then what do we have to say or offer to those people to get them on board. And then I think one really powerful thing in Web3 that we've all seen is like, what does a community first marketing strategy look like? And I saw a good tweet, I forget who posted it today, but just really like a lot of thinking about it from a community perspective instead of a customer perspective, because in a lot of ways like Web2 was so much about customer acquisition, right? Like what's your cost for a customer acquisition, and what's your like lifetime value and average revenue per user, like when mobile and performance, like there was just like a really kind of drill down into like social graph, all that stuff, where I think instead of like forming communities around brands, people just really focused on like direct to consumer, like how do we get straight to the consumer and transact, instead of like, how do we build a relationship? And some Web2 brands got it and built great communities, and there were some products that were around that. But a lot of people talk about how, like, in Web2, we are the product because of the way that data flows and how we're marketed by tech giants to other brands. And so I think like goals and audience and messaging are so important in order to help us build community. And then from that community, you have a superpower, which is like your street team, your grassroots marketing, you have your
storytellers,
support customer base. Yeah, you have like, I think one of the reasons why BAYC and some other like kind of newer NFT projects were able to succeed is like you had your community out creating and building brands, telling stories, like commissioning art, licensing their work, and everyone who was contributing to that in a like healthy and meaningful way was like adding to the overall value of the club and the experience and the master IP. And so I think like the old school way, like legacy way, was like, oh, we don't want that, like shut it down, like fan fiction and like derivative work, like we gotta like cease and desist that stuff. Like that was kind of just like the really strict view on IP, is like, okay, I control, like the IP holder has like the dominant control over the overall story and like is going to enforce that. And look, like the way that IP laws are based, you have to enforce your IP to be able to continue to enforce it. So I understand that there's like a kind of system set up the way it is, but also like I think it was this new move of like, wait, what if we just let our holders, our community, have a piece of that IP and share in it, and let them tell the stories that they want to tell, and together that becomes this kind of woven kind of broader brand story. Like that's really fun to me, and I think it's really special and made one of the fastest growing brands in history.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like the transition from Web 2 to Web 3 and how companies view that connection with their consumers. I feel like in Web 2, you're trying to just individualize, get to a specific consumer, right? Marketing to sell a product, usually to extract value, usually to make money for the company, and not so much to provide something back to the consumer. But I think with Web 3 and Bored Ape especially, it's like their main driving point was providing value to the community and allowing them, like you're saying, to have the freedom to build the brand with them. And a lot of these Web2 companies, they don't want the input of their community. They just want to interact with the community, like you said, on a transactional basis. And it kind of stunts your growth. And especially in this new digital universe, you want the digital revolution and the memers and everybody, you want them on your side. You want them on your side, building the brand with you, not making memes against you. So it's like that transition to more inclusivity is a driving point for Web3 for sure. So what innovations do you see coming to the space for NFTs, just for the broader Web3 space in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years? We talked about how there's going to be some time for regulatory frameworks to come out and that, but from a general perspective, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I guess the way that I think about it is NFTs allow us to create like digital things, and like things that we can have provable ownership of, and we can have digital scarcity. And that was something that like I didn't really realize this until like I got deeper into Web3, but like I want to live in a world where we can own things that in the digital space, right? And the world is getting more digital. I'm like, very few people are going to deny that. And so to me, like where that eventually heads is something like a metaverse, these like immersive kind of massive worlds. And I would so much rather have a piece of that world and have an opportunity to kind of build and own and share that than rent it, right? Which is kind of like the Web2 model, where like, I don't own any of that. It's just like I log in, I have my account, and it's like I exist because of their kind of royal favor, right? And if they want to kick me off, they can, right? And if they want to take my stuff, they can. And that's just a scary future, in my opinion. Like, and a lot of people are like, look, it's working fine, and they may feel that way, but I think we could wake up and actually realize someday in the future that we traded it all away. And that, to me, like a lot of people like really enjoyed Ready Player One, the book, and the movies. But to me, like uh it's or movie and books, I guess. I don't think the second movie's come out yet, but to me, like Ready Player One is a it's a warning. And so much of like, even the origin of the term metaverse and some of the like the sci-fi, it's like so often is quite dystopian, because like it's looking at a future and saying like, warning, like this is what would happen. Because the Oasis in Ready Player One, it's not a metaverse, it's a monopoly. And that monopoly, where you like, if you die, you lose all your stuff and you're just broke, and there's like, like you have to go into like indentured servitude to pay off your loan for that stuff. Like that is extremely bleak. And I think I have to imagine that a story like that was written in part to kind of help us steer us away from that. And that, like, without getting to like, Web3 saves the world, like I see a lot of potential in how a decentralized internet can allow greater empowerment for people to potentially kind of own stuff in the digital world, to potentially have a say in some of that stuff, and to protect it from centralized power. So that's what I'm excited about. And I think maybe the more specific thing about that is like, because Web3 enables us to create digital goods, I think there are a lot of pros to what you can do with a digital good that we haven't explored yet, because our mind is still kind of stuck on like physical goods.
That's a good point.
And so like, even thinking about like a digital ticket versus a physical ticket, like one of the ways I think about a wallet is the way that you think about like a CRM, like customer relationships. And like, normally in a CRM, you've got all this customer data, and it's like you've got the email and the phone number and the address and the credit card number, and like you could use all that to kind of index and understand how you have a relationship with your customer. Like a wallet, and then like community engagement as part of that wallet, is to me like a really interesting dimension to add to how we think about a CRM. And in some ways, like that actually maybe instead of like customer relationship, we think about community relationship. Like that's a way that we could add more stuff. And you could say like, hey, I know based on like wallet history, kind of that this person's been to these events or collects these things or is engaged with these other communities. How can we reward that, or how can we delight that person and invite them into different access, different experiences, different customer journeys. And so I think we're going to see, and then because it's on the blockchain, you could also in theory like kind of do that more broadly and understand like, hey, I think based on all that information, like I think this person would be really really cool to reach out to, like let's connect with them. So I mean, I'm a marketer, like, so I think about some of these opportunities in that sense. But I think the difference there maybe is like, prior to that, like a few companies owned all that data, and they had could sell that to people to figure out what you wanted. And now there's a chance to kind of take some of our own ownership about it, and then also have some of it be more transparent.
A really, really fascinating way to look at it. I mean, you basically just took airdrops that most people on crypto Twitter are just going to say, oh, free money. And now you just explained it in a way that relates it in such a business sense of marketing and like finding your customers, because that's essentially what the users are in this space. Let's say if it's a new project, airdropping its tokens, that maybe you use them for their their platform or whatever the case may be. That was awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
I'm interested. I mean, part of what we're trying to do and Board Ventures is like thinking about like how do we make Web3 better, and I think and also like kind of guarantee like this brighter future that we see as far as the digital world and digital goods. So yeah, when we think about it as a team, like we're excited about, we went to this event a few weeks ago and it was quiet. There were not as many people as you would have seen in the bull market, but like had some really incredible conversations with cool people who stuck around. So that's what we're excited about is like the community that's here that believes in something bigger than just profits or bigger than just the flip, and actually wants to see creators flourish, to see collectors flourish, and then ultimately to see like this digital world flourish in a way where it's more available to people, especially when we think about some of the appeal that crypto had is like to the marginalized. Because I think the way I view it is like if the Web2 system, the old banking TradFi or whatever it was, like if that was working for you, like you probably didn't care about or need crypto. Like I have people who they got into crypto because like the bank lost their parents' deed to their house and they lost it in like the finance crisis, the housing crisis. And it's like they looked at it and they thought like, okay, when I see blockchain, it's like that's something that could have fixed this. And it's like we don't see a lot of crypto real estate yet. I mean, we saw like a house sold on NFT the other week. But like they looked at like, wow, a public ledger that's like decentralized and open, like that could be really powerful for something that they experience a lot of loss in their family. So like, yeah, I think I talk about the early days of crypto and NFTs, like it's a lot of us are misfits because maybe we didn't belong and we found each other.
Yeah.
So that's what I get excited about. Like maybe if we're misfits, but we stumbled into something that's growing, how can we make this a better world?
And that's great that you said that because that's a big driving point for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Lebanese, he's Greek, and a lot of these countries, there's so many countries that have such little opportunity, and we are so blessed to be in the place that we are. Like literally the US, we are so privileged to have the freedoms and opportunities that we have. Like some countries don't have any of their fiat currencies are complete shit. They're not able to relocate and have opportunity elsewhere. But like Axie showed us that through the scholarship programs, obviously that needs to be refined and worked out. But crypto provided a global currency that these people in the Philippines could use to create a revenue stream that was not there, and that was much more than what their government was paying them at the time. So it's like opening up these new avenues of innovation and opportunity and financial literacy, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things about crypto. That's what made me so passionate about it, for sure.
And I agree with the misfit part too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on a few different maybe panel discussions or in this NFT, the movie documentary, and that's one of the first things I mentioned, especially when I got into Bored Ape. Was just that feeling of like from 2016 to 2020 through DeFi summer, at least crypto Twitter was popping. But 2016 through that time, you try to talk to anyone in your office, any of your friends from high school or university about crypto, and unless they were already into it, they kind of looked at you like, isn't that a scam? Like, and I felt very alone in this whole Web3 space, like behind my computer, behind my desk, until I got into the Bored Ape Discord, and I was like, holy crud, like there's all these people that are thinking the way I do. So, I like how you related that definitely hit home.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. So wrapping it up, thank you for your time, Josh. I think this was an awesome discussion. A lot of people are going to get a lot of great insight from it. Hopefully learn more about Web3 and what's to come.
Definitely excited. I got to say, I'm excited to see, where this journey takes all of us over the next 3, 5, 10 years. Like, I think that, especially when we do think about community as it's come up so many times in these conversations, like, how much stronger does that start to feel in the next bull run, in the next Ape Fest, at the next, NFT New York in 2030, right? Like, it's going to be really interesting and really fascinating to see how this all evolves, and it's really exciting to be a part of it, especially with minds like yours.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for all you've done, and we'll see you at in Basel. We'll see what's going on, but we'll see you in Miami.
Down to Magic City.
Come down to the Magic City.
Thanks for chatting.
Yep. Have a good one, Josh.